Hello there, this is Sergeant Bones, and I'm doing my very first kit review online. I've never done this kind of thing before, but no big deal. I've watched a lot of you doing this, and I wanted to bring this kit to your attention. It's an unusual kit, in my opinion. It has a couple of interesting features, and I'll show them to you within the next few minutes. Basically, this is a test variant that Porsche made for a candidate towards the Tiger B, or King Tiger. It's obvious from the artwork on the box, it's a Porsche turret. The kit is from HobbyBoss in 1/35 scale, and it is the Deutsches VK 4502 P for Porsche. Vorne. Vorne meaning the turret is placed to the front. I'm sure a lot of you have seen this vehicle either in World of Tanks or other online games where this and its brother variant that was never made, where the turret is on the rear. They have very similar hulls, just a different positioning of the turret. Benefits of this vehicle type were that the engine was completely in the rear, including its electronic transmission. Well, it didn't really have a transmission. Its electronic drive system. It was a Porsche's little pet design, which never really seemed to pan out, but is actually a forerunner for a lot of hybrid systems that you might find today in cars, of all things, and is commonly seen in U-boats, and so basically ships, submarines, things like that. Nonetheless, to the kit. I paid 23 euros for this online through Amazon, and was actually looking for a Panzer 38T on the recommendations of Hamilkar Barkas, because I was looking for something with an interior. And coincidentally, when I saw this, I was like, oh, hey, that's one of my favorite tanks in World of Tanks. Why not? And for the price, you can't complain, initially. Nonetheless, the standard box from HobbyBoss, made in China, 2010. I believe you can see that. Nothing fancy. A good, stable box. It holds pressure. And inside, we have the first thing that I noticed. I've been in the box already, obviously. A very simple color call out, including the colors for recommended type. Nothing special. It was a test candidate, and as far as anybody really knows, it was only made once and only partially, and it didn't run, and it possibly saw action, if this one test candidate actually existed, at the end of World War II. Nobody knows really for sure. It's a paper tank in all intents and purposes. Nonetheless, starting off with the instructions. It's a book in booklet format, excuse me. It's not one of those cheap fold out, flip out, turn 1,000 pages and it's all connected to one. Shows everything that's supposed to be in the kit. Unfortunately not by number, but nonetheless you can get a rough idea of where everything is. The standard starting, the lower hull, and oddly enough, the upper hull being connected. There is no interior within the hull itself. This is a question for you guys out there. I've actually thought about, because it wouldn't be that hard, adding a detailed interior within here of two, for example, like the Ferdinand uses two engines from the Ferdinand. I think it was the Maybach 120M or 120L, and electric motors to the rear for the drive sprockets. It wouldn't be that hard, as you'll see once I start showing the plastic. That's a thought that I have. The front detailing, you can't see it anywhere, but with that big back hatch, I could cut that open and let it be exposed to show the engines, possibly. Nonetheless, onto the kit itself. Ever built a Ferdinand, you'll recognize the steps for the road wheels and the suspension itself. Unfortunately, in this kit, it is a static model, and that means the road wheels do not move and they are glued in place, which for painting, that's not very easy to do. But nonetheless, it is what it is, a switcher would say. Hi, switcher. You've encouraged me to do this, by the way. And it's fairly straightforward. You're basically building a Ferdinand's lower hull. There's nothing to it. Some of these items do seem a little strange, though. For example, why do they have the jack being held on so far apart from the vehicle itself? I don't know. I guess somebody got creative and decided it would be good that way. Here's an interesting note. There is photo etched pieces. I'll show you those later. And there's actually not much to do to get the lower hull in a finished state. Just minor attachments of little odds and ends. Nothing really fancy. Nice thing is that it does come with a type of magic track. I say a type, I'll show you why later. And as of step 6, you start into the turret. And I want to make a big point about this turret. The turret itself is basically a kit within the kit. If you'll notice, I'm not going to go into detail in it, but if you notice, well, with one exception, there is an incredible amount of detail within this turret, including the ventilation systems, the fire extinguishers, hatch mounting points, the pistol port, the drive motors, the elevation hand wheels, if I'm not mistaken, they're over here, visible here, elevation and traverse hand wheels, yeah, there. There is an incredible amount of detail within this turret itself, and that is what got me to buy it. I'd heard about that it had a fully detailed Porsche Tiger B turret. So if you're looking for one, for another Tiger model, this is where you can find one fairly inexpensive, because I doubt you can get one for under 25 euros anywhere. And here's something that I noticed, though, the first time I looked through the instructions. When I look at this piece here, I see the gun blowback suppressors. I forget how you call them. I haven't been on an armored vehicle in years. And I'm also a little nervous right now, so it's understandable that I won't remember what they're called. I know what they're called. Recoil suppressors. They're sitting on top of the gun, but they don't seem to be attached to the rear of the gun. That's weird. Oh well. Yeah, it's visible even here. It's not attached, even though it should be attached to the rear portion of the gun itself, which is strange. But I'm sure I can fix that. That's no big deal. Nonetheless, it is what it is. And this made me a little bit distraught. This could have been slide molded instead of being two-piece. This could have been slide molded instead of being in two pieces. And there's a very good reason why I'm pointing that out, because as you will see on the very first sprue that came out of the box, and this is how it came out. I ordered it, it came this way. If you notice, it's bent. And the barrels, halves, are bent too. That is disappointing. In spite of that fact, in spite of that, the pieces themselves are gorgeous. There's a fine texture on the commander's cupola. Although there are no glass pieces or anything like that, it's fairly well detailed. The bolts along all of these areas, the little hand crank. No visible texture on the gun mantlets, but that can be easily fixed with a little bit of putty. The breech itself looks very nice. And there is barely any flash. This is a fairly new molding. And as far as I can tell, it's impossible to see. I'd have to hold a magnifying glass up to it. But each sprue actually has a number listing on it. And it appears that all of these sprues are a completely new casting. There's nothing that comes from another model visibly without it being set for this specific kit. And it has the number up here matching to the kit itself. There are a couple of pieces that are used in this kit and in HobbyBoss's VK 4502H for Hinton, or back, meaning the turret's on the rear end. And I imagine most of that would be from the turret itself and the running gear, obviously. It's basically the same kit, just with a different upper body. But this was all cast new for this series of kits. Moving on. I've already taken everything out of the bag. I tried doing this video once before and blew it horribly. But you live and learn. Anyway, this is the minor things like the tools, shackles, the gun cleaning rods, which I cannot complain. They look fairly decently detailed. The jack could be better, could be worse. I've seen worse. The shovel, yeah, it's a shovel. Pity they don't have some photo etch for that, but I can make that myself, so that's no big deal. The cable tie ends are actually hollow, although I have considered actually making my own. And if you look at these tracks, these extra track links that go on the vehicle, no, what are they called? These things, these little push pin marks. I know what they're called, but I can't remember right at the moment. I have this problem sometimes. Extractor pin or whatever. There is one thing that bothers me, though, is that the track links, all of the track links, including these extras, do not have hollow guide horns. And I know for a fact that this series of vehicles, all of them, the Elephant, Ferdinand, etc., they had hollow guide horns. You can see any picture online and you notice it immediately. It just sticks out. Other than that, a very nice sprue. Nothing fancy, but nothing where you'd say, oh my God, that's never going to work. No, it looks great. On to the next sprue. This is predominantly interior parts for the turret. In fact, I believe, yep, including the seats, which really do have a nice leather texture, surprisingly enough. The floor plate is also textured quite well. I can easily see the hatch marking on it. The gears for the drives, the turret drives for elevation and traverse, are quite well detailed. And well, okay, it's going to be a bear to get those off, but nonetheless, look at the handles. Very nice, very sharp details. No flash, nothing where you'd be disturbed. The inside of the ventilation for the turret is very well detailed. It'll take a wash like you wouldn't believe. No ejector pin marks. Hey, I remembered. No ejector pin marks on the front sides where they would be visible. They're all very decently stuck on the backs, or even not visible. So I can't complain about that either. Here is an additional turret detail set, including the MG34, or yeah, and it's in one piece. It's nothing fancy, but it will do. It's very hard to see when it's inside the turret, but it's fairly well detailed. It's obvious where the ejector port is. It's obvious where the locking bolt is. It's very nicely done, considering its size. I will not complain. Interesting, inside of this cover here are ejector pins, but they're not visible because another piece lays on top of it. So they were very, very creative in hiding the ejector pins on critical areas. And I will tell you this, if you don't like fiddly bits, you will not like this kit. This is not a kit for a beginner. This is a kit for somebody who's done some of this kind of stuff before. The ammunition is not bad. In fact, I can barely make out a seam line. Just barely a mold line along the edge there. So that won't take much to clean up. Not bad. Will not complain about that. And last but not least, the standard Ferdinand Elephant VK series road wheels and bogies. Nothing special. Move along. It is what it is. Detailed steel wheels. Yeah, it worked. I won't complain. In fact, I can almost make out little differences between the inner bolts and the outer bolts of the wheels themselves. So that's not bad at all. And I will not complain about it. So, where I will complain are the tracks that come with it. They have no hollow guide horns, and yet they took the time to make all the other detail quite crisp. It looks really nice. It's got all the little light edges on it. It's got the roughness to it, just like on a Ferdinand. It's beautiful. These are Link, so like semi-magic tracks, I guess you could call them. And apart from the fact that you have to cut them off the sprue in 6 different places, they're beautiful because they have no ejector pin marks. All the ejector pin marks are around them, but not on them. So in that respect, that's fine, but what is it, like 95 tracks per side? Times 6. And that's how many times you're going to be cutting to get these apart. Not good, not bad, but I really didn't like that. I wanted workable tracks. And in this respect, I picked up a set of Ferdinand tracks. They're basically the same thing, but they are workable. Unfortunately, they aren't just like HobbyBoss's own. These tracks from Trumpeter do not have hollow guide horns, but at least they do have a light indentation implying the hollow. Initially, I thought they were not the same size as those with the kit. And I looked at that twice. And then I looked at it 3 times. And then I held them up to each other and went, oops. They're pretty darn close. And they're actually more detailed. So, am I going to complain? No. If they don't work, I've still got the kit original. But I'm pretty sure these will work just fine. Although, since they're dark and they're light, they do definitely look like they're different sizes. They're pretty darn close though. So, I'm not going to complain. Besides, it is what it is. Funny thing is, I'm noticing a slight difference in the track itself. I'll have to look closer at that, but nonetheless, I didn't pay that much for these. Same as the model, so I'm not going to complain. It gives me something to do. And there's only 4 mounting points per track link on the sprues. And also no ejector pin marks. The PE fret, nothing special, just some nice little screen mesh for the back of the deck, which, oops, as you can see, go right here. Well, actually it goes on top of an expansion. These fit nice and neat over these. Nothing fancy. A copper cable wire for the tow rope, for the tow cable. No big deal there. The upper deck has some very basic texturing on it. It does have the dovetail welds, and they are quite clearly there. And they look very nice. They'll take a wash very well. But as for the rest of the hull, it's boring. But it's boring because it was a test candidate. It was not an initial production or anything like that. It was just a test. Other than that, from the kit point of view, the lower hull is absolutely boring with the exception of the inclusion of the welds. There is nothing on the bottom. Not like you really see the bottom that much, but there are beautiful welds along here and here with some slight, I don't know, that might get covered up later on, no big deal. Anyway, the hull fits quite well, so this won't be much of a problem. I don't even think I'll even need to fill the front or the rear. As you can see, it is a perfect fit. It's just horribly boring. But I'm sure I can fix that up with some other pieces. The turret comes in 2 pieces. As you saw in the instructions possibly, there are pieces that deck up every ejector pin mark on the turret itself, on the interior. It's basically the what do you call it? The spall liner, you know, the inside of the turret. Does it fit good? I've heard reports that it does not fit all that great, but with minor work you can get it to lock in place so there's no big deal and everything will then fit and look good. But I find it a nice addition to your standard interior where you would normally see all kinds of pin marks and, you know, ejector, some flash and nasty things laying around, whereas this one will actually get a complete interior. So that's pretty nice in itself. And because of the gun being bent or warped, yeah, I could have straightened it out. I'm sure I could have taken the time. I'm sure I could have done a lot of things, but I decided to buy the Aber 35 L125, German 8.8 centimeter KVK 43. I know I'm mixing my German and English. L71 gun, because it is specific for this type of turret, and I've got to admit, it's beautiful. It's gorgeous. I wouldn't expect anything else from Aber anyway, but I was a little surprised that this gun itself has got 10 pieces. 10! It's a lot of work. I will be soldering it though, and I will show when I solder the end of the muzzle brake on how that fits. Because there's a neat little trick for people who do have a soldering iron but never trusted themselves to solder something like this. It's not as hard as you think. So I will take the time to film that. Oh, I know I forgot something here. Last but not least, in the kit was standard numbers. You can make anything you want. And that was important to me, and that is something that I would like to ask all of you guys out there who see this video. Let's put it this way. My personal ideas are, I would like to make this a what if kind of model. What if the Porsche candidate had been accepted? What if it did go into production? What could be done with it? Obviously, fenders added to the sides of the hull, similar to that of a Ferdinand or Elephant, or maybe even like a King Tigers style. Excuse me, a Tiger 2 or Tiger B. Bravo. What about an interior? Is it worth it? Trying to dig up a couple of Maybach 120Ls? Oops. Or scratch building some? Why not? I think so. Some of the other aspects. There are so many other aspects to this kit, its potential, that I'd really appreciate, excuse me, I'd really appreciate some of your input on it. When I'm looking at this vehicle overview, all I see is potential. It's got a huge back deck. I've mentioned that before. The standard Ferdinand style mud flaps or fenders shouldn't be a problem to make by myself. I'll just scratch build them out of either leftover PE or a little bit of thin plastic. And for camouflage, something really progressive, let's say 1947 ambush camouflage. Something that's different from the norm, something that's really unusual. Maybe a rust brown, mustard yellow combined with gray dots. Why not? Just something different. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed seeing this kit. I'm going to film parts of it while I'm building it. And anything that I do unusual, because I hate to admit it, but I'm just a poor guy who lives in a town that doesn't even have a decent hobby shop. If I even want Tamiya extra thin, I have to go out and mail order it. I can't just go to the store and buy it. So I do a lot of things real old school. I can get Revell paints. Speaking of which, Tactical Jackalope. This is the actual color of the inside of a Bradley. It's the Revell Matte 59. And I've actually compared it with a piece of a Bradley recently. And it's spot on. So just as a little note. And anyway, I hope you all enjoyed that. And if you have any questions or any ideas that I could possibly use, please let me know, write in the comments, and I hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much.